Every family in the southwest should be able to afford a first home, be it to rent or to buy, but we are fast becoming a region of second homes, Airbnbs and holiday lets. Our communities are being hollowed out, and that is something that is proceeding at pace. The pandemic is turbocharging the housing crisis that we have in the southwest, but the measures to react to it are not coming in the same pace, and we need to look at that again. There are far too many people waiting on housing waiting lists. There are nearly 10,000 in Plymouth on our housing waiting list. That's people living in overcrowded accommodation, living in B&Bs, not the Airbnbs we've spoken about, but accommodation that's not suitable for long-term occupancy. And we need to do something about it that it means everyone can have a first home. Now, Plymouth operates the Housing First model, and I commend the council, be it red or blue, for adopting this approach that says the first thing that we should do for any person in crisis or having difficulties is provide a safe and secure roof over their head. I wish all councils were to follow that suit. It is a good one. But we are running out of roofs to put over people. We need to make sure that we are building at the right pace and that we're making sure those homes are genuinely affordable. I agree with the remark about 80% affordable not being affordable. That is spin. It's a simple spin to try and persuade the public that enough action was being taken when it's not. 80% affordable is not affordable, and we must not fall for that. Nor must we believe that the dream of home ownership is available for everyone. That is spin from decades ago. Home ownership is out of the reach for the vast majority of young people in the southwest. It is something that is accentuating the brain drain out of our region at the very point when we have an opportunity to seize the potential of the southwest, to have more people living here. The average house price for a first-time buyer in Devon is $258,000. You need a 10% deposit, that's £25,000. That's too much for many people on low incomes in the West Country. We do need to make sure there's alternative routes in there. And with more families struggling to pay bills, that makes saving up for a house deposit, be it for the private rented sector or for purchase, so much harder as well. We've seen a massive surge in homes being purchased to become second homes. And this is contributing to the hollowing out of our communities. We've also at the same time seen people renting a property on the private rented market being evicted under a Section 21 no-fault eviction, and on the same day as they are being evicted, that property appearing on Airbnb. It's a good way for landlords to make a lot of money. It's a bad way to have a sustainable community and families in need. And the cost of that family now in crisis falls on the taxpayer. It is something that's completely unsustainable. The private rented sector in large parts of the southwest has collapsed. We are experiencing market failure. There is therefore a need for urgent intervention that we have not seen in the past decade on this point. Happy to.
He's making an excellent speech, and I totally agree with the point that he's making. But what we need to do is look, exactly as the member for St Ives said, is covenants on properties saying primary residence only. And that must be on new builds, but it can also be on buildings that are bought into housing associations or houses that are sold in the market. We must look at how we can adopt that strategy.
I thank him for his intervention, and I think there's a good route for covenants. As someone whose little sisters work in farming, for instance, the agricultural ties on some properties is a really important way of making sure that some people are able to afford to live in a rural area and work in agriculture. But we know those agricultural ties are too often being severed from properties, and those properties then being turned into holiday lets or empty second homes. I do agree with the suggestion that my neighbour made from South West Devon about an urgent housing conference in the southwest. And I think there is a special need here because the southwest is experiencing this problem ahead of many other regions, notwithstanding our Lib Dem friend from Cumbria here, but we are hitting this problem first because we have the highest number of second homes, the highest number of Airbnb penetrations, but it is going to come to every other region of England and every other region of our country. So instead of us being the recipient of bright ideas in London, let the bright ideas come from the communities that are being affected the most. I think this is an excellent suggestion that I'm sure would enjoy full cross-party support to make sure it works. But there's opportunities here. Now, the Minister will know, because I've badgered him, as I have badgered the Shadow Minister on this, that the proposals for a First Home Not Second Homes campaign that I've worked up with colleagues from Cornwall and across Devon puts the emphasis of this policy on ensuring that everyone can afford a first home. It's a principled moral stance about home occupancy that we need to be looking at. And I hope he will look carefully at the devolution proposals that's come from Devon and Cornwall about what powers, additional powers over second homes and Airbnbs could be included in our devolution deal to make sure that we're better able to take that on board. Because the personal stories are harrowing. Ellen from Plymouth told me that her and her 7-month-old daughter have had to flee domestic violence and placed in a hotel, but there's building work outside from 8 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. It's simply unaffordable for her to move into the private rented sector, and there's not social housing available for her in her band. Colleagues from Cornwall have shared stories of people working unable to afford the rent increases this year, now facing homelessness or the need to move out of our region. There's one particular case that I've been working on for many years about the lack of accessible housing. So not just affordable housing, but accessible housing for those with disabilities. This is especially acute in a city like Plymouth, where our housing stock is already compressed. And so the ability for people with a disability to have accommodation might be possible in a one-bedroom flat. We have a few of those. But if that disabled person has a family, as many of them do, they're not able to access that accommodation because it simply does not exist. There is no vehicle for that accommodation to be built and to be funded, so therefore they sit in perpetuity in a no-man's land that is simply unacceptable about where we get to. There are some suggestions that have been made, and I agree with nearly all the suggestions that have been made so far. The First Homes Not Second Homes campaign has been picking out some suggestions that aren't always in the public domain. I would like the Minister to consider allowing local councils to quadruple council tax, not just on empty properties, but on second homes. The Welsh Labour government introducing that 300% council tax on second homes, I think, is an interesting pioneer project here. I'd encourage the Minister to look at it, notwithstanding the difference between party colours, because we need to get this right. Our communities are being hollowed out by second homes, but that means looking at how we are getting our communities hollowed out. And one of those areas I'd like him to look at is the enforcing of covenants on right-to-buy properties. Councillors Jane Kirkham and Councillors Kate Ewart, two Labour councillors in Cornwall, have been pressing Cornwall County Council to ensure that covenants on right-to-buy properties that exclude those properties being used as holiday lets must be enforced, because far too many of them are being used as holiday lets. So that, I think, is an opportunity for us to look at again, and I commend their work that they've been doing here. The First Homes Not Second Homes manifesto also deals with the fact that our communities are being hauled out from the last shop in the village. So it's about the bus routes going because there's not enough daily traffic. It's about the shop not being able to make enough money all year round, although they might do well in the summer months. There's a real opportunity for that. The final point, Mr. Hosey, that I just want to make is we need to build more homes, but we also need to retrofit the homes we've got. Far too many of our homes, especially in places like Plymouth, frankly, are too poor quality. 43% of the people I represent live in the private rented sector. There are some really brilliant landlords in Plymouth, but sadly there are a number of landlords that have let their houses deteriorate. And so we do need to make sure that there's an incentive to properly insulate, properly secure properties, which will lower the bills, which might make the end product, making them more affordable. But we are in a state of housing crisis here. Our market is failing, and that's why I look to the Minister for urgent action that can be delivered this year, not sometime ahead. And I commend the suggestions that have been made on a cross-party basis here today. Thank you.